Good morning, y'all. Hello, and welcome to the second Instagram Live of the week. I am so excited for today. I'm going to post our little comment thing in here so you guys know what we're talking about. So today I have a special guest. She's a good friend of mine. Her name's Lex Gonzalez. Like me, she's a lawyer and she's competed in pageants. And we're going to be talking about the intersection of race and pageantry because each of us have had incredible experiences while we've been competing. We want to share and just talk about race as it relates to pageants nowadays. So I'm gonna wait for her to join. There we go. How are you?
Let me back up so you can get all of this hair I have happening.
Yes, all of the gorgeousness this morning. You got a little color in the print. Hello, ma'am. So I was telling everybody that I'm so excited to talk today. Guys, this is Lex. She is currently a corporate attorney, but she's also competed in pageants for years. And Lex, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Is there another phone or something on in the background?
No, but it could be my puppy, so my bad. But there's nothing else on.
No, you're fine.
But of course he's going ham right now because I'm talking.
He's adorable. Can you show him again? He's so cute, guys. I love Lex's dog.
Rumi, say hi to the world.
Hi, baby. So like I was saying though, so Lex, like right now she's a corporate attorney, but she's competed in pageants. We actually competed in the Miss America organization together before I competed in the Miss Universe organization. She was an interview winner twice in a row in North Carolina at state, and she also held a national title called America's National Teenager. So we're so excited that you're here. Tell us, how many years would you say that you competed in pageants?
Oh, wow. Okay, so from the age of, I think about 13, 14 to 23. So kind of like roughly like 9 or 10 years. Like most of my, time I was in any kind of grade school, college, and then even into my first year of law school. So a lot of my life was spent doing pageants for sure.
And even now, you still like help people that you and I both know in pageants and sort of advise people.
I do a little bit of coaching, just overall strategic, preparation for state and national competitions. So I'm really enjoying being on the other side of it now. A lot less pressure.
There is. It's a lot less nerve-wracking, telling people what they need to do. Especially even now, like people ask me for advice. I'm like, oh, I can tell you whatever I want. Much easier sitting in my seat than it is like still competing. And guys, I'm seeing a few questions. We're gonna be answering questions closer to like the middle of our talk, but just to make sure I don't miss your question, if you'll drop them in the question box at the bottom, it's just a little box with a question mark on it. I'll make sure to refer back to those in a little bit. But first, Lex, you and I have talked about the instances of racism that you and I have both seen in pageants.
Rumi, come here, baby. Come talk about the intersection of racism and pageantry. I'm gonna step off for just 1 second.
Her dog, y'all, her dog is precious. And what's so funny is like us all being at home nowadays, I see so many dogs in the interviews that I do, will be like, I think it was Olivia Culp I interviewed and she had her dog with her and the dog was like,
he's got a puppy too. So he's literally never been like this. So I really don't know what's going on, but
he's freaking out because he's hearing that we're on Instagram Live and he wants to join us.
I think he's upset about the racism that's happening.
That's it. Barking racism makes you upset. Exactly. So we've talked about the instances of racism that we've seen. I mean, what have you seen while you've competed and even now?
Yikes. Well, when I competed, it was some time before I think it became really the thing to do in general, and it wasn't very popular. So one thing, it wasn't very popular, but the other thing, it wasn't very diverse at all. I was usually the only person of any kind of color. I'm half Puerto Rican, I'm half Black. My mom is Black, my dad is Puerto Rican. I was the only one of any kind of color in these pageants. And, that's unsettling when you're younger and even as an adult, just to be the only person and you look around and no one looks like you. No one that's judging you looks like you. No one that's running the pageant looks like you. No one in the audience looks like you except for your family. So that takes a level of strength all on its own. But then you also have to deal with just bias and racism during your appearances, perhaps from other competitors, supporters, and whatnot. And it comes out in different ways. Some some maybe boldly, and some are, you know, passive microaggressions that I'm still looking back to this day thinking about, okay, maybe that had something to do with racism.
So, you know, aside from just, you know, lack of representation, what are some of those like specific instances that you've seen?
Well, I remember so I was the first Miss Wilmington, and I think you mentioned that in some of the like previous discussions we've had, and I know that it's the most concrete example I can look back to where it was just a difficult time, and I look back and think appearances for me that maybe other queens had been getting scheduled very easily weren't happening, or certain folks that previously had always been supportive of the pageant all of a sudden weren't supportive of the pageant. You know, I've had instances of online bullying, instances where I may have very clearly been the best competitor, but I was called, you know, overweight, untalented, just unpolished was a favorite. And, you know, I like to think I was very polished, and I definitely presented myself the best way I could. So,
exactly.
You know,
and let's talk about this, because this is, guys, this is the prime example of microaggressions in pageantry, is calling especially a woman of color, because that's like almost always the time that I see it, calling a woman of color unpolished. Like, you know, we'll speak a certain way, or we'll say things, or maybe you'll, oh my God, see my natural hair or edges, and all of a sudden I'm unpolished. And I think I've seen that over and over again. And it's not just in the South, because you and I both competed in North Carolina. I've seen it across the nation, where people will give comments or criticism to women of color and call them unpolished. Like, we hear it. It's like dog whistle. Like, we know what that means. And people don't always think of it that way, but that's exactly how it is. It's calling this like, and that's not to say that, you know, you just generally saying that a person needs more polish means that you're racist. But if you are constantly referring to women of color as being unpolished, like, we clearly know what you're really saying.
Right. And it's one thing if it's a microaggression, it's another thing when it's outright lie. I mean, and generally, like these people are just saying it just to be hurtful and nasty. It goes so far beyond just the regular bullying that one might experience. And while that's not okay, it's systemic, and it makes you wonder as a contestant, you know, are my efforts, you know, in serving my local, you know, county or state or country recognized? Like, do they value me? Am I seen as a valuable competitor, or am I just here just, you know, essentially as a hobby, and I'll never really win this thing, or I'll never really fully be supported? And that's a lot when you're putting yourself out there, working for something day in and day out, you know, pageant prep and all the steps it takes to get to a national title like you have, Cheslie. That's years in the making. And for someone to enter into a system where no one looks like you, you're experiencing things that don't make sense, and it's all because of the color of your skin, that's a lot.
Exactly. I think that the experiences of women of color frequently end up being different than the experiences of non-Black women. Like, I remember when I won my first local, because those who aren't familiar with like the Miss America organization, at least in North Carolina, in order to compete at state in the Miss America organization, you have to win like a local title. So like Miss, you know, Charlotte or Miss York County or whatever. And so I remember winning a local title in North Carolina. And there was this, you know, you've heard about these boy boards, these like anonymous posting boards that people have. And I remember going on one of them, like maybe 30 minutes after the crown was placed on my head. And somebody was like, I've already looked on her Facebook. She looks really ghetto. And I was like, what? Like, what
You
of
all
people ghetto? Yes. And it's just like that. That's the kind of feedback or comments that I've heard from me. I'll see it in, you know, people commenting on other people. I remember once I was talking with another person about, this is back in, I think it was 2017, the Miss Universe competition. It was when Demi won, and I think it was her second runner-up was Miss Jamaica, and Miss Jamaica wore an afro. I mean, it wasn't like people call my hair a curly fro. Hers was literally an afro. She had coarse textured hair, and she was beautiful, and they were like, yeah, I really liked Miss Jamaica. And, you know, we were talking about her performance, and they're like, yeah, I wish she would have done something with her hair. I think she would have gotten a lot further. And I was like, what do you mean done something with her hair? Like, they're like, well, you know, flat ironed it, straightened it. And I'm like, Lord Jesus, here we go. Like, there's nothing wrong. Her hair was beautiful. She looked beautiful. And I think it was doing her and other Black people a disservice to say the only, you know, thing that would have made a difference is if she would have conformed more to our European standard of having pressed hair.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually went through that as a competitor. It was suggested to me that I get extensions. That's what they were called at the time. Extensions. I don't even know if they're still called that, but it was suggested to me that I get extensions to make myself more competitive. Mm-hmm. And like, if you look at the girls I was competing against, they're white. And they have completely different hair, completely different features than me. There's no way I can compete against them. And I always went to competition thinking I'm competing against myself. It's me and the best I've ever done X, Y, or Z. You know, the best mm-hmm. I've ever tap danced, the best I ever, you know, hit my stage marks or whatever. It wasn't ever trying to look like them, but yet I was being told to win. Essentially, I was gonna have to change my hair. And part of me does wonder if I would have gotten extensions, like back when I was competing at MAO, if I would have done better. I always wore my hair. It wasn't my natural hair like it was. I wish I would have worn my natural hair now. looking back, I didn't push the envelope far enough. But you know,
it was hard to.
It is, and I just feel like I wasn't looked at in the same light because I didn't have all of the things that the other girls had, and it wasn't because I wasn't polished enough or, you know, I didn't have enough preparation. It's because I look different, and that should be okay. And it wasn't okay.
Exactly. Well, and, you know, we talked about, you know, you making that decision or you wanting to wear extensions. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't just you trying to conform. It was other people, you know, establishing this standard and us wanting to meet that standard rather than encouraging people to broaden their perspective of what beauty actually is and what the standard actually is to be a strong competitor. Like if the standard is only, you know, you need to have a narrow nose and, you know, straightened hair that's all the way down your back, like I'm never gonna meet that standard, you know, unless I get plastic surgery on my nose and flat iron and burn my hair out of my head. And so I think what we need to see more of is more people understanding that the standard needs to be broadened so that it is more inclusive of not just European standards, but standards of beauty that fit a number of cultures that are beautiful and that need to see that over and over again.
Yeah. That's a good point, for sure.
Yeah, it's hard. I think it takes it's a whole system, and it takes a lot of us working together to make sure that people see that. But one of the things that you touched on was, you know, not seeing a lot of representation, even in not even just among winners, but in like finalists, and sort of seeing the lack of representation there and the tokenism it builds up. What do you think about, you know, that idea and how it's changed over the years?
Yeah. Well, back to when I was competing, I could never make it to the top 10 or top 11 or 12 at Miss North Carolina, but I would always get the overall interview award. So I was like, well, dang, something has to be going right. Mm-hmm. And I would never make it far. You know, like I would be in the pageant, but I could just never get far. And, you know, over a period of years, you know, looking back and as I've watched it going forward, there used to not be many girls or any girls of color in the top 10. And now you're seeing not only girls in the top 10, 12, 15, but top 5, final 2. And that's been like unreal for me. And when I tell you, I never thought that I would see the day of that even happening in this country, but even in North Carolina, South Carolina, like the southern states where pageantry has typically been a good old, you know, girl type of activity, it's just been really nice to see not only just, you know, Black women, but any woman of color being able to finally break those boundaries and those things that kept me back for so many years, and seeing them get to do it. And I told Cheslie this, you guys, when she won, and, you know, I remember texting so many very qualified women that should have won the crown years ago. All of us were texting that night and saying, wow, we all got to win because Cheslie won. And that's the coolest thing, to finally see our sister being just amplified in such a way, on such a platform, that it allowed us to be ushered into that room too, because it's been denied for us for so many years. And it seems like, okay, it's just pageantry, but no, it's the testament of someone's hard work, you know, willingness to put themselves out there, and the fact that they give back to the community. And it's so much more than a pageant. So for Black women to be advancing in such a way as they are, I'm so excited. Sorry, that was long, but I had to share my excitement.
Well, and I think for some, I think it's meaningful, because I think there are a lot of people who are like, why are you so happy that, you know, this woman of color, Cheslie, has won? Like, we literally just had Kyra McCullough, we just had Deshauna Barber. And I think it's important for us to see, because there are many women, myself included, who wonder, like, okay, a Black girl just won last year. Are they going to let us go back to back? Like, oh, 2 Black girls won within the last 2 years. Right? Can there be another? Are we ready? And it's like, we all need to see that yep. You can just work hard, and people aren't going to look and say, we've had enough Black people for now, we don't need another one. They will just look and see, like, she's the one this year.
Yeah,
and
it's just as normal.
Exactly.
It's just as normal to see women of color year after year. It should be the exact same as we see white girls year after year. That was never a weird thing. Mm-hmm. So why is having multiple women of color year after year an oddity or a strange thing? That should be the same. And I mean, honestly, we could keep spicing it up. Let's have a Black girl. Next year, let's have a Chinese girl. Like, let's keep going, because
nice.
The reason we're here is to serve the communities we live in. And just like, I mean, I don't want to get off on this topic, but you know how police forces should look like the people they serve. Our queens are people that not only, you know, put themselves out there to be community service, philanthropists, you know, lovers of humankind. They should look like the people in the communities that they're working with. And for a long time, it hasn't been that way. So it's just really exciting for a little Black girl or a little Spanish girl to be able to look at Miss USA or even Miss Metrolina, Miss Charlotte, and say, that looks like me. Because when I was young, I was looking at those girls wanting their job, but they definitely didn't look like me. And I still wanted it anyway, but it would have been more comforting to know that it was achievable.
Exactly, because it becomes more tangible when you see someone like, okay, she looks like me, or okay, she comes from my town, or okay, her dad, you know, it has similar activities or interests as my dad does. You cling to those commonalities, and it helps you to really realize that you actually can do it too. You're not shooting for the moon here. It's a tangible goal.
Someone said normalize women of color winning. I love that.
I love that. Thank you, Misha. Yeah, and I really think that's really, really important. And I don't think it's just something, I don't think, you know, we need to see that constant diversity just in any one system. I think we need to see it across all systems. I mean, we competed, like I said, in North Carolina MAO, and for years, I remember we all talked about, you know, whether or not another Black woman could win, because for a long time, Deneen Graham was the only Black woman who had ever won the North Carolina title, and it was really concerning. And I don't think that that's something that non-women of color talked about often, but it was certainly on the front of the mind of every woman of color who competed in North Carolina, myself included. It's like, there's only been one. We've been here for, 60, 70 years. Like,
I remember meeting her my first year competing, I think was like the 75th anniversary or something. And it was like meeting Oprah. It was like, oh my God, the first one to ever do it, the only one to ever do it. Like, oh my. And the thing is that without even having to explain why I was so happy to meet her, me being the only woman of color in the class that year, she immediately like already knew what I was trying to say. She already knew what I was up against. She already knew how I was feeling. And she was so supportive and so encouraging. And we've been able to build a friendship over the years throughout supporting Miss North Carolina. And now we have 2.
Yes. And I have to say, guys, like, so I watched the Miss North Carolina pageant, MAO, this year on, like, virtually or whatever. And not only was Alexandra Paget the winner, her first runner-up was also black. So we had a black winner and a black first runner-up. And I remember watching them stand there holding hands, and I was like near tears. I think my
You were
boyfriend
texting me.
Yeah, I was on the phone, like I was on FaceTime also with the guy I was dating at the time. I was texting you. I'm like trying not to cry. I'm screaming, and he's like, "What is wrong with you?" I'm like, "There's only ever been one, and now we know, like, the first runner-up and the winner, there's going to be another black person to win." And it's just like, you don't realize how important this moment is, because for years you just thought, like, will there ever be another black woman to win?
You really thought that it would never even get close, and it's really sad to even think, like, okay, she's in the top 5, it can't be her. There's no way they would do it. And to even have that thought, like, I don't even know. I mean, no one else has had that thought except for people of color because of their race. Like, no one's ever had to think that way. And I think that they need to understand that that's how we've been feeling, standing up there on the stage, knowing we gave it our all, knowing that we've done all the things, checked all the boxes, and yet it still may not be given to us just because we're black. Crazy.
Exactly.
So in that moment, I do remember just thinking that my mind was blown and that I couldn't believe it, that it was historic.
It's amazing.
And losing my mind, literally, because I never even thought I'd see it.
Yeah, and guys, I don't want you guys to think that this is us, like, ripping on MAO or on North Carolina. This is an issue that stems across the entire pageant industry, all systems. All of us need to continue to diversify and make sure that people feel included, make us feel like, okay, you can win if you are most qualified, or if this is your year, and your race shouldn't exclude you from being able to be successful. And I don't think we've always seen that. So we've had a ton of questions here. This is a really great question. Misha says, what steps can be taken to increase inclusion in pageantry? What do you think?
These are starting to feel like on-stage questions.
Right? 30 seconds, go.
Okay. So I think the increase in representation is the first step. I think young girls need to see that women that look like them do win, and they need to see that from a young age. It needs to be a consistent thing that we see. I think that more women and men of color need to involve themselves in these pageant systems. I think that a lot of the people running these things have been there for a little too long, and perhaps we could get some younger blood and some more diversity in terms of who is actually making the decisions, who's making the rules. We need diversity in our judges. We need more events that give women of color the platform to speak on their issues that really impact them, and not just what these systems want them to do. I mean, there's no reason why a woman of color should be going to like a Confederate flag luncheon, perhaps. So that doesn't make sense. So we need to start, I think, vetting the people that have these pageant systems in the first place as well. A lot of people are in these positions of power and have some hate in their hearts, and that's not acceptable, and it only trickles down to the bottom. So there's a lot of steps there. Didn't mean to give you a comprehensive plan, but
yeah. Well, yeah, and I think that you're right in that it's not just, I think a lot of people think, like, okay, if we have a diverse set of judges this year, it's going to be better. And that's not it. I think in order to make sure, I think that in order to make sure that we foster an inclusive environment, we need to see inclusion at all levels. And I think that's what you said. It's like, we need to make sure that our committees are diverse. We need to make it our mission to be inclusive so that we can actually, cultivate an environment that is welcoming. Because if you just bring in black judges and make people think like, oh, they're going to pick a black person, that doesn't help. Especially when people are literally saying, and I have heard this said and seen it written, where people were like, oh, they put a black judge on the judging panel, they must want a black girl this year. That doesn't help us. That doesn't help anybody. That just makes people think that if a black girl is crowned, that it's because there was a black judge on the panel. Not that a woman won and she was, deserving and worked hard for it. It just takes that win away from us. Yep. So I think that we need to see, diversity in the judges. We need to make it our mission to be inclusive. And we need to make sure that, like you said, we're training people about the right language to be using. It's not appropriate to go to, a Confederate flag, luncheon or conference like that. That would be that's not inclusive. Like the Confederate flag is clearly a racist symbol. We can't allow that within the decision makers in our pageants. And so I think it's that idea and that focus on inclusion at all levels that will really help us. Yep. All right, we've got some more really great questions on here. All right, J Ford 555 says, would you agree with trans competitors in pageantry? And we've actually had a trans woman in the Miss Universe organization. I believe she was Miss Spain, I think was the country that she represented, the year that Catriona won. And I was happy to see that because I think the LGBTQ plus community needs to feel welcome just as much as people of color need to feel welcome. We just did an Instagram Live a few weeks ago with Miss Utah USA, Rachel Slauson, who is bisexual, and once she walks on the Miss USA stage, she'll be, you know, the first openly bisexual woman at the Miss USA competition, and I am proud of her. And so I think we need to continue to see that inclusion, and we've seen it in the Miss Universe organization, and I'm hopeful to see that across more organizations as well. What are your thoughts, Lex?
I agree. I think it's counterintuitive to say that we deserve equality and then to say that someone else doesn't deserve equality for what makes them different. That the logic doesn't math. The math isn't mathing there. So we'll want to make sure that we are supporting every person. And if they want to do a pageant, they should be able to do a pageant. That's just how I feel. If they want to sign up, because you have to look at what doing a pageant is. It's not just looking beautiful. Okay, first step, look nice. There's so many other things that come along with being a title holder. And if any person in this country or any other country wants, I mean, and I know we're talking about the United States, but this is the Miss USA, Miss Universe organization. We're talking about all people. I think if they want to sign up to be someone that does community service, someone that empowers the people around them in the place where they live, someone that's a role model for others, someone that's giving and kind and loving to all people, why would we want to deny that person the opportunity just because of how they identify themselves, who they love, the choices that they make like that? That's A, that's none of our business, number one. And B, or two, whatever I said, A, B, 1, 2, all of my points, all of them, no discrimination. We're done.
Yeah. Yep. I totally agree. Wholeheartedly. Yeah. All right. Here's a good question. This person says, how can we articulate our political stance if the pageant organization has been hesitant or does not speak up at all? What do you think? This is one of those questions where you gotta take a deep breath.
Whenever I'm prepping people for pageants and interviews, I always say, sometimes you want to take the third door. You don't want to say yes or no. You want to say something else. And I'm not going to take the third door here. Listen, I think if you, in 2020, in the day and age that we live in, with all of the things happening around us, with so much at stake, in this day and age, like, we have to be honest with ourselves. The world is not how it was 30 years ago. No one can afford to be silent about their views. And if your political views happen to be different of those in the organization in which you're representing, I think that that can be a discussion in how you present yourself and the things that you say. But I do not think that you should be silenced. I mean, you have a right to speak on your political views just as much as they do. And the fact that you are a person with a platform makes you even have the responsibility to do so. I think that whenever someone's given a platform, especially in 2020, if they don't use it the right way, a lot of harm can happen. And there's just so much at stake that I'd hate to see a young lady miss her opportunity to be the change that she wants to see because she's afraid of making someone upset. And that's just kind of how I live my life. Because at the end of the day, I have to do what's right and stand up for what's right. And I wouldn't be able to sleep if I knew that I wasn't speaking out on behalf of my beliefs and for people.
Exactly. I wholeheartedly agree. Especially in this day and age, especially given, you know, the generations of people who live in this day and age. I think that like millennials and Gen Z actually expect their employers to embody their own beliefs.
We do.
And so I think that is a fair question, and that, you know, the Miss America organization or the Miss Universe organization or NAM or, you know, Princess America, whatever organization that you're competing in or representing, your generation believes that they should embody your beliefs. And so I think that's okay to express what you actually believe in. I think the danger comes when you express your belief in a way that disparages the beliefs of others.
Yep.
So it's one thing to say, I believe this, and this is the reason I believe this. It's quite another to say, I believe this, and you're an idiot if you think anything else.
Yep, exactly.
So I think it's okay to express your opinion. You just need to make sure that you're not disparaging other people for thinking differently than you.
Yeah, that's good.
All right, you guys are like blowing up.
A lot of questions.
Let me see. Okay, I like this one. King Garcia, like you always come through with the good questions.
Yeah, these are interview questions, you guys.
I think
they're like, you said she won interview. Let's give her a question.
Exactly, and these are good questions. I like them. All right, so the question is, how would you convince a feminist that a beauty pageant like Miss USA or Universe is still relevant in today's society?
Yeah. Well, okay, let me. All right. So I think, I mean, a feminist. I mean, this question almost implies that a feminist can't think that pageants are a good thing, and I think that. Right. I'm a huge feminist. That's why I did pageants. I mean, it's the reason why I advocate for being a role model for women. All my life, I've advocated for, you know, healthy mind, body, and spirit for young women. Like, that was literally my platform. Like, that was literally the work I did with young women at Girl Scouts, Boys and Girls Clubs, like you name it, I was there. And it's because I'm a feminist. I think, whose definition of feminism are we using? If we're using...
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is I think some people think that feminists are like bra burning, grow your hair out everywhere kind of women. I think there are different variations of what feminism is. I think there are some people who think, you know, in order for women to be advanced in society, you have to do everything in the opposite of what people expect from you. Like, you can't be a stay-at-home mom because people think that women can only be stay-at-home moms. You have to be a businesswoman or woman, where conversely, I think there are other feminists who think, like, we're women and you can do what you want, and while you're doing what you want, you should be treated equally, no matter what your gender is. And so, you know, I think, to clarify, you know, not all feminists think, you know, the same way. Some of us really just think we should be equal no matter what you do.
Yeah, no matter what. And I will say, I've never felt more confident and womanly and just like in my own as a young lady and as a woman. I'm really sorry about my puppy, guys, but he just really misses me. When I was doing swimsuit competition or eating out competition, I mean, it takes so much courage and so much belief in yourself, so much confidence. Like, I mean, I had to work out all of those negative beliefs in my mind that I couldn't stand up on a stage in a bikini. Do you know what that takes? Like, that to me is so powerful in itself. The fact that there's something that can allow you to challenge those things in yourself and do something that you never thought you would do. I think it's powerful. So I would tell them all of those things and then maybe see if they still feel the same.
Exactly. Well, and
that's my advice.
I think that we continue to maintain relevance in today's society, and I think that was clear after the 5 women of color won the big titles, Miss Universe, World, America, USA, and Teen USA, and we saw the news coverage that it got. Because I think oftentimes when people think of a standard of beauty, they think of a beauty pageant title holder, and so I think it was important that people looked to MUO and Miss World and MAO as like, this is what beauty is today. And then they saw Black women fill those roles and thought, look, beauty is Black women. And so I think that demonstrated that we are still relevant because people cared enough to say, look what our society is saying about beauty today. They're saying that Black women are beautiful because look at these 5 women of color.
Spot on.
All right, so someone says, why don't you choose my question? I don't see your question in here. Okay, ooh, this is interesting. Okay, so Misha says, how does financial enrollment in pageantry affect women of color? Because pageants are expensive. They are.
Well, I can only speak for myself as a woman of color, my experience. And I mean, so my first pageant dress ever was $5. We got it. I'm serious.
Was this an evening gown?
It was an evening gown. It was lavender, kind of like this lavender. It was fire. Okay. And we found it in this thrift store. And, you know, my mom, single mom, did everything she could to make sure that I never missed out. I got to do every single thing I wanted as a kid. And looking back, I'm amazed at how she convinced me to wear this $5 gown, probably like what we could afford at the time for this extra random hobby of pageants I wanted to do all of a sudden. And she encouraged me to get sponsorships. I mean, I at a really young age typing up sponsorship letters, going door to door to businesses, signing little cards, like saying, I want to be Miss North Carolina one day, please support me. And I would literally get people to sponsor my dream, people in the community. And I think that, you know, I'm not about to say that every woman of color in pageants has to do that. Some people may be blessed to not have to get sponsorships, but some people have to get sponsorships, and I definitely had to do that. But the payoff was who
are we losing
who even calls me? That never happened.
We lost you for a second. You said the payoff was what?
Yeah, the payoff was ridiculous in terms of how much I got to pay for college and for some of my law school with the scholarship money. Yeah. So, you know,
tell us how much scholarship money that you got in all the pageants that you competed in.
Oh, geez. That's a lot.
Yo, Lex got paid.
I will say that I was able to like completely pay for at least 2 of my years of college, and then was able to take some of that into my law school with me. And that's a lot for someone that was doing it as a way to pay for college. Like I didn't enter into pageants as a way to become famous or to like take pretty pictures of myself or anything like that. I literally did it to get into college because I knew that there wasn't going to be another way. So like the payoff was really huge for me, and it taught me a lot of skills about how to get your community behind you and how to ask for help and how to be humble. Because without those people, I wouldn't have been able to afford to compete a lot of times.
Exactly. I think that's one of the benefits of competing. And even though as Miss USA, we don't have a scholarship, you do get a salary, which you certainly can apply to, you know, any student loans you have. But on the state level, I know there are some MUO state competitions that offer like in-kind scholarships. You just have to pay attention to which state you're competing in. Pay big attention, because I judged in a pageant where we didn't offer scholarship money, and I asked a woman why she was competing. She was like, for the scholarship money. And I was like, what scholarship money? Because there isn't any in this one.
Yikes.
So make sure you pay attention. But to piggyback on what Lex just said about, you know, talking to sponsors and making sure that you can afford to compete. There's also this huge community of women who compete in pageants. And I have worn so many borrowed dresses, and I have allowed so many women to borrow my dresses. Like there are so many women, if you like, you know, can befriend people and, you know, just ask people for help, people really want to like help you. There's so many women who like randomly message me who I don't know, who be like, I loved your red ball gown that you wore. I'm like, do you want to borrow it? Like, just dry clean it before you bring it back. So there are so many women. I think that's the power of the sisterhood of many pageant organizations, is that people just want to help you. And if you really can't afford to like buy a $10,000 dress, like there are some women who will let you borrow their stuff.
And that's actually how we met, was you just reaching out to me, not for help, but just as like another like person that was competing, and you reached out to me, and that's how we became friends. We didn't even actually like see the same stage before we like were already like connected. So that was pretty cool.
Yes, and guys. Well, yeah, and I have to tell you guys how intimidated I was by Lex, like, because I've heard about her year after year, that she'd won the interview award, and I was like, dang, she's so smart, my God. And then, like, I looked her up on, like, Facebook, because you're using Facebook a lot then, and I was like, oh, my God, she's beautiful. I'm like, so I remember we were about to compete in the same local. I think it was Sweeps or something, and Sweeps was, like, for us, was, like, the last local of the year. This is, like, your last chance.
Really
and
intense.
So I was like, God. Yeah, and I was like, God, now I got to compete against this smart, beautiful woman, and this is my last. I was so mad.
It was my last year, too.
Yeah, I remember. And so I remember we became friends on Facebook because I remember going to, like, I think it was an interest meeting or something, and I didn't see her there. And so I was like, I wonder why she's not here. So, like, on the Slick, I think I messaged you or something. And I was like, hey, didn't see you at the meeting. So weird. And she was like, I'm not competing. I was like, yes, I got a chance. Yes. So,
girl, stop it. Miss USA, stop it.
But that's how we met. This is the incredible Lex Gonzalez, who's so intimidating, and she's incredibly accomplished. And so I'm glad that we met, and that now we're actual friends instead of just competitors.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. This is an incredible question. This is from Nia Clark 8. She says, how can I convince my parents to let me do pageants as a teenager? Great question. What do you think?
Well, first look at why you want to do pageants. And I think if your reasons are good, my reasons were to scholarship money, pay for school. I love to dance. I did tap dance as my talent, so it was an opportunity for me to perform. I love children, and it was an opportunity for me to give back to my community in that way. And I mean, wearing a beautiful gown wasn't that bad. So once I convinced my mom that all of those things were great, plus like the interview practice I would get, the fact that there were grade requirements to some of these pageants. I mean, once I did all of that, it was a pretty easy sell. The only thing that she was concerned of was how we were going to pay for it. And like I just said, the sponsorships helped a lot. So I think if your reasons are good and you can express those to your parents, then they probably will be supportive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And you took the words right out of my mouth. And that I think if your reasons are good reasons, it's easy to convince your parents. And I say that because like my reasons weren't always good reasons. I think at first I just wanted to compete because my mom won, and I was like, you're so pretty, I want to be pretty like you. And so I remember when I first started competing, and I was like, I just want to compete. And she was like, are you competing just because you want a crown? Because I can buy you a crown.
Yeah.
And I was like, why do you speak to me that way, Mom? Oh my gosh. So I remember like over the years, I just kept competing and eventually continued to see the benefit, continued to see the development I got in my interview skills, continued to see just the connections that I made in my community that paid off in other ways outside of pageantry, the confidence that I built. And those eventually became my reasons for continuing to compete, even though they weren't initially my, the reasons that I started off with. So.
Yeah. Yeah, pageants are really good for self-development as a young woman, and they give you a lot of skills that you wouldn't get in the outside world. And you come out of it as this young woman that can speak. You're not afraid of pressure. You can handle yourself in a boardroom. You can handle yourself on a farm. You can go volunteer somewhere. You can literally do anything. And it's because of all of the situations and opportunities that you were exposed to because of pageantry. So I would not be myself if I didn't do pageants, and I'm really thankful because, I mean, interviews in corporate America make, I think pageant interviews are way harder, but I'll just say that.
Yes, absolutely. And it's funny because I think pageants are where I've gotten most of my mock interview experience. I don't know many of my law school colleagues who went through rounds of mock interviews before walking into a real job or internship interview. Which is kind of scary. Yeah. Yeah.
And I've literally had partners at law firms tell me, well, this was an amazing interview. Like, they get so distracted by how amazing our conversation was. Like, they forget that we are, like, I'm wanting the job, sir. Like, thank you for the conversation. I too agree, but I would really like this position. So I think that it just prepares you in ways that you couldn't get elsewhere. So I echo that.
Yeah, and you mentioned the community service as well. I mean, I think that we do so much community service, and so many people reach to, women who are title holders in our communities to speak, to volunteer, and those connections pay off later. Like when you want to be on the board of directors of that organization to make more connections or to elevate your profile in your community. Like, these are good opportunities, and these are good ways to really get your foot in the door. And so, I mean, we could talk for days about the benefits, literally talk for days about it.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for being on here, Lex. Seriously, I think this is a great discussion. It's just so great to have your perspective, especially as a woman who has competed in pageants, a woman of color, and just a successful businesswoman, a corporate attorney. So thank you. Per usual, you're amazing.
No, you're amazing. And thank you, Cheslie. I mean, you've just been really taking this title by the horns, as they say. I don't know what that means. I hope it's not offensive in any way. You've been killing it, girl, and just to see your advocacy for fellow women of color during your year has been beautiful. So thank you so much for all you're doing for us, and continue doing for us. And I love you. Stay safe up there.
Thank you, girl. I love you too. Hopefully we'll catch up soon. Maybe one of these days I'll be in North Carolina and stay-at-home orders won't be in effect and we'll get to hang out.
6 feet though.
Yes, 6 feet. 6 feet in mask.
Bye, Lee. Bye.
See y'all.